Hello, good morning. Hope you're doing fantastically well. Today is Thursday, the 11th of December 2025, and this is papertrail.com, a daily streaming all about governance, risk, and compliance in the UK for the SME and mid-market firms. And today's topic is where culture becomes action, right? So on Monday, we said supportive culture reduce anxiety, right? On Tuesday, we discussed that clarity on expectation remove the defensive behavior. And yesterday, Wednesday, we gave you the structural map that eliminates duplications. And today, we answer the next question. So, how do people actually make confident decisions inside that structure? So, and the answer is risk. And the good news is your teams already think this way. They simply have not been shown that compliance works exactly the same. So, as we mentioned in other episodes, people never gets up in the morning thinking they are going to fail. They already probably they are stressed, worried, and with anxiety because they don't know how to um, see how compliance works in the way that they think, and probably they're already doing that naturally, but they stress and worry because they don't have the mechanisms to show that, right? So these are the three most common problems, and I'm going to mention a few frameworks, and don't worry about them. I'm going to explain them as we go along. So number one is UK government guidance confirms that decisions grounded in risk, and here's a big point, not assumptions, lead to more consistent outcomes, but many organizations still treat compliance as a checklist rather than a decision-making process. Problem number two is that the Health and Safety Authority, and this is one of the frameworks I want to mention, they have a model for managing health and safety. That this model stresses that understanding hazard, likelihood, and impact is essential. Yet many staff never see how these principles apply across all compliance duties. So, what the Health and Safety Authority already mentioned as part of their compliance understanding also transfers to all the other compliance requirements, right? And number three is the internal evidence shows teams struggle when compliance lacks context. So without knowing why a control matters, people delay decisions or apply them inconsistently, increasing uncertainty and workload. And I have a very nice example here is, you see, and this is a silly one, but actually bear with me. When you have a wet floor, you have to put this yellow sign there that is a wet floor, be cautious. So this is part of the requirements in terms of risk prevention. And but people also sometimes they forget about it, or they don't do it, or they don't care about it because they say, well, it doesn't really matter. People will realize. I say, but this is the wrong assumption because they don't understand all the implications of not having that wet sign there in the floor. So when people are explained properly why they have to do it and which are the consequences of the risk and how to prevent those risks, so then it's much easier to them to say, okay, I have to be more willing to do this automatically rather than to think too much about it. And probably many people already think about that way, but they don't know all the mechanisms behind it and the consequences and the risk that are implying those yellow signs there, careful, wet floor. So as a metaphor, if you want, think of risk like checking the weather before a journey. So if there is a storm coming, probably you're not going to get out right now, but it helps to choose at what time you're going to do it, if it's convenient or not, or just completely not to do it. So that's risk prevention. So then you avoid surprises. Here are some 3 points to consider to encourage your teams to make confident decisions inside the compliance structure. Yeah. So how all these structures, how people be more encouraged to do it. So number one, bring compliance back to fundamentals. So is the likelihood, impact, and detection difficulty. Give teams a shared language for considering decisions. When the logic is visible, people move with confidence because they know that it's a process they have to follow and they understand why they have to follow this process. And number two, use a single scoring method. So whatever is GDPR, health and safety, cyber essentials, or EPR for packaging, use one approach to prioritization mirrors, using one approach mirrors how businesses decide on budget, supplies, and operations. So this consistency reduces hesitation and second guessing. So what I'm trying to say with this is actually many of these frameworks operate with similar things. So if you bring a single method to qualify what are the risk, which is the higher risk and the lower risk, that's the scoring, then people understand where they have to bring the priority to the activities that they are performing and avoid this trap. This is number 3. Link every obligation to a risk rationale. So the Health and Safety Authority already give a guidance that emphasizes that people follow controls more reliably when they understand the underlying hazards. So by aligning compliance actions to risks, the relevance becomes more obvious. And here is something actually we are going to discuss later on, which is the risk treatments. So, well, as you can see, this is a complex topic, how to bring people along with you, because and remember, people, they don't want to fail. They don't want to be monitored. They want to do the right things and need a level of explanation to make sure that they are doing the right things. So particularly for SMEs and mid-market companies where there are no dedicated teams, officials, or personnel within the company to run all these compliance requirements. So it's no strange that companies go and outsource these services or look for consultants, advisors, or literally, many options, delegate to contractors. Contractors also have personnel and they have to understand what they do, how they do it. So as I always mention, when you're going to outsource or hire externally, you should have a baseline in terms of compliance, or at least one in mind. So 3 suggestions when you're suggesting, particularly to make confident decisions inside the compliance structure, is the suppliers that are going to hire, consultants, advisors, or contractors. What is the outcome that they produce? Do they calculate the impact, likelihood, the tension, and the time sensitivity? So with the scores of these things that we mentioned earlier, so showing teams which risks exceed your appetite and which treatments matter most. Users see context instead of a flat task risk. So if they have that scoring very visible, so it's much easier for people to say, okay, I need to pay attention to this and I can relax a bit more on this one, but actually I'll be doing all the things that are required to do at this time. Number 2, what differentiator they provide to you? Can they provide a platform that suggests treatments aligned with the UK recognized categories, so which is avoidance, reduction, transferring, contracting, which is in contracts, monitoring or acceptance. So these are the things actually you can have as a scoring or treatments for the risk that are around your organization. So this is helping teams turn assessment into decisions supported by structure rather than pressure. So if it's an avoidance, this risk, and it's justified and documented, you can avoid that activity because it doesn't represent a risk for you, or you can reduce the risk doing these activities, or you can transfer this risk, for example, with insurance, but you have to document why it's transferred to the insurance company, or this something had to be monitored, or is so low in the scale that actually you can accept that risk without further activity, but make sure that it's all documented and justified. And number 3 is when outsourcing, how they help to reduce your risk. And this is another way, so is how they treat all these things. So each treatment that becomes a measurable task with ownership, evidence, and status. So decisions are transparent and defensible. So that is strengthening both the culture and the audit readiness. And remember that evidence is always the best defensible position that you can have in your organization, in front of inspectors, audits, notices, etc., etc. So if you want to test this today, one action you can do is pick one compliance obligation, write down its risk, the impact if it fails, and the likelihood today, and how easy it is to spot it earliest, which is prevention and predictability also is one of the big things that you have to consider to make sure that actually it doesn't happen again, or at least to be prepared if that happens. So you will see instantly which controls deserve attention and which are more like in the acceptance side of the spectrum. Now, you want something that is faster, is reliable, and easy to do. That's why we build our software from the ground up, paper trail. So if you want risk-led compliance decisions that make teams confident and audits predictable, join the paper trail waitlist and we'll build your unified risk model for you. And all this is ready to demonstrate those risks, how you document them, and the evidence. And remember, again, is the evidence is the most or the best defensible position for you in front of any inspection, audit, or notice. So you can have it all in one place, continuous gap analysis, a clear view of what's done, what is missing, and who owns this fix or fixes. I mean, who is the supervisor, who is responsible, who is the person that have to do something about it before assurance inspections, reports, or audits hits you. So you can do it once, you do it properly, and move on into the things that are more interesting to you, which is grow your company and be more profitable. So join the waitlist, papertrail.com, and stay tuned because tomorrow we close the loop this week, how incidents and evidence reveal what's really happening in your organization and why a supportive culture depends on learning rather than blaming. So